Welcome to the Anton Stentner podcast. And today we're going to be asking the question, how do you know when your market is crashing? Especially right now with so many people saying doom and gloom, and we haven't had a market crash really for over a decade. You could say even like 14, 15 years, depending on your market. Everyone thinks it's going to happen. I've thought that. So then my question is, what do you look at? What are the things that you pay attention to know when your market is crashing, Anton?
Today we're going to go through this article, and it's talking about the housing bubble 2. So I want people to be able to go read a little bit of the doom and gloom. Go listen to the YouTube video that's doom and gloom. Hear a little bit of the fear porn. And let me explain why. Blind optimism is a massive recipe for disaster. So we can be positive, but we also need to look at the other side and go verify their data and kind of question it. So what I want to talk about today is this idea of first principles thinking. How do we break down their data, and how do we look at their argument and kind of challenge the idea of what it is that they're talking about?
What is first principles thinking? Because I know a lot of people talk about it. I know that some people even use it as an example to describe Elon Musk and how he runs his businesses. What's like the simple definition for people that never heard that?
Yeah, first principles thinking is this problem-solving approach where you take like a big complex problem and you say, what are the fundamental truths about this problem? What are the basic components? Instead of relying on the known facts, the known ideas, the emotions, the traditional methods, first principle pictures are principles. What it does is it encourages people to start with, I know nothing. What is the basic knowledge here? And now how do I rebuild this exact argument from scratch? In other words, get rid of all of our assumptions and just start over.
It's kind of like what Elon did with Twitter, right? Get rid of half of the employees, do another half purge, and then you're just starting with the basic framework and then building from there. Like in a way, he kind of rebuilt Twitter in a smarter way. Would that be a first principles
That's
example?
Exactly it. And if you look at how he did SpaceX, it's the exact same thing. SpaceX, he went and he did research on how rockets are built. He went and talked to a bunch of amateur rocket people, and everyone said to him, you can't build a rocket and get it into space and get us to Mars and do it cost effective and better than these world governments.
If NASA can't do it, you can't do it.
Bingo!
But he used a first principles way of thinking.
He went and broke it down into how do rockets work? Why do they work like this? What's the conventional knowledge on them? How do thrusters work? What's the fuel? What are they shaped like? And he started working back from the beginning. So if you go and look at all of his old models, he's got all these ghetto rockets, and they're starting with these little ones, and they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So all of a sudden with the last one, perfectly up, perfectly down, comes down, the little thing, bam, grabs it right out of the sky.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It looked like it's so fake looking. It's like a CGI. So then, okay, let's bring it back to real estate. What is the first principles thinking in relation to real estate that helps you understand, like if your market's crashing?
So I want you to kind of break this down into a set of thinking. Number one is you need to identify the questions and the assumptions. You need to challenge the status quo. So if the status quo is your market is crashing, what if this wasn't true? Flip it around. The market's going up. What if that wasn't true? And start thinking about it from the opposite angle of what's there instead of relying on the conventional wisdom. Two, you have to break down the problem. Deconstruct the issue into its most basic first principles. Focus on facts that are verifiable, fundamental, and self-evident. The problem with housing, it's emotional. So what happens is all of our emotions get involved in this, and it pulls us in all these different directions, and the logic goes right out the window. Number three, we've got to rebuild solutions from the ground up using these foundational truths. We've got to restructure the solution or the idea in a logical and innovative way, and then look for new possibilities. So Why is housing crashing? Why is it not crashing? What supports that? Where's supply coming from? Where's demand coming from? How do they relate? Well, we know supply comes from new construction, okay? What's happening to new construction across the United States? And then what's happening to new construction in that local metro? Because real estate's very local. So the housing market nationally could be moving in a certain direction, but what's happening locally? What's happening to the cost? So cost is like the fundamental, that's like the end of it. Well, let's go back. What's the labor? What's the building material? What's the timelines? What's the amount of available land? What's the amount of real estate agents selling these things? What's the amount of mortgage brokers? Especially when we're looking at data, how are these people profiting by telling me this? Okay, so we're going to get into a gentleman who has an article or a website called Wolf Street, and he's very doom and gloom. And I love reading his stuff. He's very smart. He's very articulate. He explains his point of view, even though I may not always agree, because I want to see the other side and start dissecting it. I think another really big question, other than how are they getting profit from this, why are they saying this? What fears or emotions are driving their beliefs and their decisions in business? What past experiences do they have? So, listeners, subscribers, I need you to ask, why is Anton talking this way? Where does he profit? He profits from real estate brokerages. He profits from real estate commissions. He profits from being an investor. Where do his biggest profits come from, or the largest wins? Being an investor. Where could he make the most money? If the market actually crashed. So when I say I believe the market is going up, that is against me making the most money. And let me keep explaining. One, because I'm a hardcore investor. Two, because I have built a real estate machine that is set up to deal with bank-owned properties, foreclosures, and short sales. So if that part of the market came back, it's just another heyday for me. Boom, I got massive cash rolling in to buy investments. So I want the market to crash. I'm just not getting rewarded with what I want. When someone else is selling a product, and they're selling data, and they're doom and gloom, and they're talking about the market's going to crash, and you have to keep checking this data. Well, it's because they want to sell their product.
I like that example that you're giving, or just pointing out. You have to understand whoever you're getting the information from, what's their motivation.
Bingo.
You and I have an interesting dynamic. We both love real estate and are interested in it and work in it to different degrees. But our expertise is, yours is real estate, mine is social media, right? And YouTube specifically. And so I always think that as well. With YouTube, anybody can say anything. So I always question, why would they say this?
Yeah.
You know, like if they're giving advice, maybe they're trying to sell their course, right? And this other gentleman that's got this real estate channel, I think it's not just breaking down what he's saying and why he's saying it. It's also thinking about, like, what does he actually do for a living? You are a real estate agent, a broker. You've got a team, and you have to serve a lot of people, and you have to serve clients that you see every single day in some cases over the course of 10 plus years. Yep. So you can't be, and maybe you went through this season where maybe there was mistakes made unintentionally. Like, who could have ever really known that the crash was going to happen, right? Yeah. But that person that bought in 2006 and their house goes down 30, 40, 50%, they can't pin it on you, but you kind of have to live with that. So fast forward, you're like, the wisdom, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to inflate anything that I don't need to inflate, especially at the risk that, like, it could be wrong, because I'm here to do a service, and it's not my responsibility to know what's going to happen in the future. It's better to be conservative versus this other guy who has a YouTube channel. The whole point of a YouTube channel, I know this is a YouTube channel too, is to get views.
Yeah.
So then you might, if you're not like Anton, have the wisdom and the integrity, say whatever to get those views, even if the information is inaccurate. And the thing is, that person might not think it's inaccurate. They just think that this is what they have to say to get the views, but they also think they're serving people and different perspective. One note I put on here was, and maybe we'll talk more about this later. You said about first principles thinking. With real estate, these are the things that you should know before you just make assumptions about what is right. You said you have to think locally.
Yes.
So what happens in other markets, this person I think does this. They take these data points and then transfer, hey, if this is happening there and this is also happening here, the result is going to be the same. But it isn't, because guess what? Seattle is so different than Miami. And the employers are different. The economy is different.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is this first principles thinking is smart for everywhere probably.
All areas of your life.
Yeah, but it's actually super necessary for real estate. And I think it kind of all starts with, why am I getting this information? Why are they sharing this information? And not just double and triple checking, but constantly checking.
Constant.
Yeah, because like you said, homes are an emotional buy for a lot of people. And then also because creators know this, they might trigger that to get the view versus give you the right information.
And it's not even just creators, it's our society as a whole. So the news media does it to you with their clickbait articles. Someone does it with a tweet. They do it with their blog post. They do it with their email. They're feeding your fear. They're feeding your emotion, causing a response. And that's one of the benefits of first principle thinking is it encourages you to remove your preconceived limitations on the data, on the facts, on what you believe is true. It's going to lead to this clearer understanding of problems and opportunities, and it builds efficient, effective solutions. By focusing on what's true rather than what has always been done or what they've heard or what your great Aunt Tilly told you. And to go back and kind of round this out before we go into this article about the housing bubble is I'm extremely proud of the fact that pre-Great Financial Crisis, the majority of the people that went into foreclosure that we knew were not our clients. They were not investors. Unfortunately, they were builders and developers. The builders and developers that we knew got way more decimated than the home buyers and the home sellers. And very few of our clients went into actual foreclosure. So I believe the market hit as much as 9% were in foreclosure versus our past clients only represented like 1 or 2%. So what I can say from an amazing perspective is, 1, we didn't oversell our clients. 2, we got them into the right product to fit the right thing that they could afford. Because with homes being so unaffordable right now and interest rates being so high, I'll be honest, Benji, it's something I worry about. I worry about just the general affordability and people being able to afford it long term. So one thing that we always ask people is like, okay, if your income went down by 20%, could you still afford this? Could you still make the payment? And if the answer to that's yes, then you should buy the property. If your income goes down by 5% and you no longer can afford it, you should buy less of a home or save up more or get a cosigner or something of that nature. This is what we're talking about. See, with all of our investors, with all of our subscribers, with our people in our world, I always have a little bit of bravado, and I talk big because I think big and we're doing big things. But at the same time, we are cautiously optimistic and we plan with contingencies and we plan that things will break and fail. You have to do that.
All right, so let's get into the Wolf Street
Yep.
article that kind of made you inspired to talk about this.
So he talked about the housing bubble burst number 1 and 2 by looking at it through mortgage lenders, okay? And you think about that and you go, what? But he draws some good correlations. There's good data in here. This is why you have to always ask, what's this person's biased? What are they selling? Can I break this down into fundamental truths and look at it? So mortgage lending declined massively because the Fed shot up rates. And so they're talking about mortgage lenders, so non-real estate lenders in housing bubble 2 fell 37% from the peak in June of 2021, representing its lowest level since 1997. Going back to the great financial crisis, you saw 45% drop in these non-real estate lenders. So the question I want you to ask yourself is, why during the great financial crisis did we lose so many? And what does this mean about today? So, one, heading into any major run-up, what you see is more people get into the mortgage industry. You see them originate more loans. You see them originate more refinances, and you see that explode. And when you're looking at this chart, you can see the explosion in the thousands go from, let's call it 200 to almost 340,000. Then we lose 45% of the industry starting in late 2007 to the bottom in 2009. What Wall Street is saying is he's saying this run-up is now caused a 37% loss. Therefore, this is the start of a housing bubble number 2. Yeah. Okay, so once again, the average person looks at this and they go, oh me, oh my, the sky is falling. Oh no, what's happening? Slow down. First principles thinking. Are there more people working in real estate lending right now or less people? Well, what's happened over the last 10 years? We've had more automation, more digitization. There's becoming less people. So number one, the industry has shrank a little bit.
People are using apps.
People are using apps. They're using online
There
things.
definitely weren't any good real estate apps in 2007.
No, they didn't exist. And so there's just less people inside of the industry. What's another interesting factor that I want people to be thinking about here, and I want to ask you a question, so don't look at our top 10 list. Non-bank lenders dominate the market. Who do you think is in the top? And I know you probably don't know, so it's totally fine. I've got the top 10 list of non-bank lenders and who dominates the market here in the U.S. Who do you think dominates the market by loan originations in 2023?
Is Rocket Mortgage one of them?
You've seen their ads. Rocket Mortgage is number one.
I saw on the paper. The other ones I would say would be like some kind of it's like some kind of online mortgage broker, something online based.
Well,
right?
Rocket Mortgage is a really big online company.
Got it. Yeah. So then I'm forgetting all the other names. What was that really popular one that got into a lot of trouble in the last 10 years? I wonder if they even went out of business. I can't even think of them.
No worries.
I just know this. A lot of people get into these online-based mortgages because of online ads.
Bingo.
They're just better at getting you, right?
Yes.
Versus the traditional banks who are working kind of like old school methods of getting your attention. They might be running ads too, but the online ones. Anyways, that would be, I don't even know what the other ones are.
No worries. The two largest mortgage lenders in the United States in 2023 were Rocket Mortgage and United Wholesale Mortgage. Together, they represented $179 billion, which is more than the next 8 largest combined. So number 1 and number 2 are bigger than number 3 through 10. And 3 through 10 is Bank of America, Fairway, Cross Country, Navy Federal, U.S. Bank, Citizen Bank, PNC, and Loan Depot. See, Loan Depot, another good example. A lot of commercials, a lot of ads online. The total of the top 10 was $350 billion. So realize when they say this industry dropped, by 37%. So if you combine mortgage employees and non-mortgage loan employees, they lost 150,000 people from the peak, or 36% of their work staff.
So the short answer to why this is an accurate piece of information to determine if there's a crash or that there's going to be a crash is because the circumstances are totally different. Back in 2000, by the way, this stat is from 2023, but back in 2007, when they had that 40% plus drop, it was because of the circumstances of the real estate industry, right? The bad loans, oversupply, and just the craziness that was happening in the market itself. Versus now, the drop in mortgage lenders is because the competition, the technology, and in fact, the other things I mentioned aren't even happening. So same trend downwards, different, I'd say different like fuels sources, right?
Different circumstances.
Yeah.
So this is this idea. Go to the base fundamentals. Go to supply. Go to demand. Go to the elasticity or the inelasticity of the market. Go to the affordability. Go to the interest rates. Go to population. See, what happens is people look at these from a base level. They read the headline. They get some emotion, some feeling, and they go, everything's falling apart. So what you saw as the Federal Reserve massively crammed up interest rates was you saw refinance applications drop by 70% during the same time period, okay? From 2019, and they're down 81% from 2022. So pre-pandemic, 70%. The peak, 81%. If there was that many refis going on, does it surprise you that 36 to 37% of those workers had to go away? No.
And probably refinancing is a lot easier with this technology too, probably.
Refinancing has gotten easier, but refinancing is getting harder for the consumer.
So both ends, it's bad for that lender person that makes a living from it. Okay, so then I think the thing is, it's nice that we know why this information isn't a good source, right? And we're thinking first principles. So what are the first principles you want to utilize to know if your market is going to actually crash?
I want you to start, go back and start just kind of breaking the problem down. So one, define the fundamental problem. Surface question: does employment in mortgage lending collapse housing? Okay. First principle.
No.
Employment in any sector will lead to less demand for a product or a core service. In this case, mortgage lending showed a clear decline. But does a decline in loan officers mean a market is crashing?
I don't think so.
It doesn't. So this is where you have to kind of just immediately, so one, we define the problem. Two, we start breaking down key variables. Well, housing market dynamics. Okay, housing bubbles based on a surge in mortgage activity. There's more demands for loan, more demand for refinancing, and then that housing bubble bursts and that activity plummets. Okay, that kind of makes sense. But was there an actual burst, or did something else cause that demand to plummet? So did we see prices change?
Yes.
We saw them change a little bit, but then they stabilized.
Are you talking? Well, it depends on what time period.
Yeah. So let's talk about 2022. So as the Fed raised rates at the end of 2022, prices did come down a little bit.
Yeah.
Then they stabilized and then hit a floor and essentially went up. So over the last 2 years, are prices up overall or down overall?
Last 2 years, up overall.
Absolutely. So one, let's look at pricing. Two, let's look at supply. Because one of the doom and gloom things that people are saying right now, supply is surging. When supply is at an all-time low, like if you're at the bottom and it comes up a little bit and they say it's up 21%, but if it was at 1 month's worth of supply and it's up 21%, it's only to 1.2 months worth of supply. That's still a seller's market. That's still a lack of supply. What they do is they use the data to trick you, to go to your emotions.
They're using what is convenient for them to be able to use the same label or title, right? So the supply is surging. Well, like you said, supply is surging right now. It means 1 month of supply to 2 months of supply. Versus when you said supply is surging in 2008. It's going from like, I remember because I was agent back then, it was going from like 3 to 4 months of supply to like 10 months of supply, right?
Yeah.
What was like the highest?
If I remember correctly, I believe the highest here in the Seattle metro was like 14.8
months.
That's
a whole year.
It's over a year.
So, but they're using the same label.
Yes.
And that's where the first principles based thinking helps you to realize, okay, just because they say the same word, it doesn't mean the same thing, because the circumstances and the actual data that matters is the thing that's going to determine, is it an actual surge? Is it an actual crash?
And where did it start? Where is it at relative to history? Not over the last 1 year, but over the last 10 years. Is there things that have fundamentally changed in the market? So let's go to the Seattle metro. Permits are down. Development applications are down. We're making less homes here. So when somebody says, oh, supply is surging, days on market is up, it's up from the bottom. Another one that's definitely been my favorite. There was a headline that came through a little bit ago. It said foreclosures are up 536%. And it was because it went from like point something to point something. But when you look at foreclosures in aggregate and the actual rate of foreclosures here in the United States, we are at an all-time low right now. But yes, the number's up. So what I'm trying to teach you is I want you to dig deeper. I want you to ask questions. I want you to ask you these motivating things. We know that interest rates really fundamentally affected this. And we know that market participants also fundamentally affected this. And that is home buyers, home sellers, and banks. So banks tightening up their lending means I don't need as many people. Banks creating automation means I don't need as many people. But also as interest rates shot up and that affordability was removed, the home seller, that is that traditional move-up buyer that sells their median price home and then moves up into the next one, didn't sell because it didn't make financial sense. So that supply constraint was pinching the market even more and continues to pinch it. That will continue to pinch the market until rates get into the low sixes or high fives. All you have to do is go back and look through the data nationally and go look at interest rates, and you can see as rates get down into the low sixes, the whole market across the United States picks up and lights on fire. And one thing that people were just trying to say is they're like, oh, it's winter, the market sucks. Here in Seattle, the last 5 offers our team has made in the last week, ask me how many of them had a bidding war.
All of them? How many?
All freaking 5 of them were a bidding war.
That's like a fire market.
In December, when it's pissing rain outside and it's cold and nasty. And usually December is a very slow market. So what I said to the team and what I'm saying to you, our investors, our subscribers, is I'm saying to them, if you think the market's hot now, what do you think it's going to be like in the spring when the weather gets good? As we know what the new president is doing, as the economy starts to get going, it's going to be bidding wars like crazy all over the Seattle metro again.
Can I say one more thing before we go to the next point?
Yes.
Another excuse or reason people say the market is about to crash is they say, okay, yeah, housing supply is low. They're not building as much, but other people are going to sell their homes because the economy is bad or people are losing their jobs. They have to work 2 jobs. Well, there is one huge variable that wasn't the case back in the day. That is the case right now. All those people kind of being pinched right now, like financially, they don't want to lose that low mortgage rate.
Bingo.
And that low mortgage payment. Because you know what their option is right now? Because housing supply is so freaking low,
yes,
is they would have to leave their mortgage payment of their home, which is an asset and just the place their family lives, and go into a rental.
Yes.
In a rental market that's got the freaking craziest rental payments. Sorry about the audio there, Nuchili. The rental payments are so stupid that I'd rather be pinched in my own home that I own than literally be like, I don't know, struggling paying someone else's rental like mortgage, payment.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's kind of first principles light this. One, do humans have to live somewhere?
Yes.
Two, to live somewhere, do they pay a mortgage or rent generally?
Yes. Almost like 99.9999%. I want to know the 0.0001% that doesn't. But.
I think 17% of the homes in the United States are paid off.
Yeah, but those are people that don't have mortgages.
Bingo.
And they're not going to move.
So, but to answer your thing, 17% are paid off. So that means 83% of people are either renting or paying a mortgage. The majority of the mortgages, at what interest rate were they originated? Above 4 or below 4 right now?
Below.
Way below 4%.
And we're above what right now?
It was 6.95 yesterday. So the majority of these mortgages are 4%, while interest rates have risen greatly, so that locks them in. Number two, rental rates shot up. So for the vast majority of Americans, when they know they have to pay someone, it would cost them more to rent than to just stay in their home. Therefore, that helps to prevent the market from crashing. Next item. Lenders figured it out in the great financial crisis, and especially during COVID. They did something I've never seen, and I've worked for 54 different financial institutions, including Fannie, Freddie, HUD, Bank of America, Chase. Pick your big boy and big girl, I've worked for them. They started not foreclosing on everyone. They have all these workout solutions. Those workout solutions didn't exist in the great financial crisis. They didn't delay things. They just foreclosed on you. So now there's the delay. Okay? Number three, there's less inventory right now becoming available. In the U.S., we are about 4.5 million units behind. So we know rents are going to keep going up. So people let's just assume the economy got really bad, inflation got out of control. A lot of people have mortgages that are $1,600 to $3,000. And then their rent in the Seattle metro would literally be $2,600 to $5,000.
You ain't leaving that mortgage.
So you're not leaving that mortgage. You'd literally get a roommate to move in with you before that property goes into foreclosure. So the foreclosure rate is at an all-time low. So this is what I mean. Start to challenge these assumptions. Write them all down. Number three is the challenging of assumptions. You got to question the existing narrative. You got to question the assumption. So let's talk about the assumption. Do real estate markets boom and bust?
Yes.
And is that inevitable? Ooh.
Oh, man, I want to say yes, but the timelines aren't set.
So I want you to think about this differently. As we look at the great financial crisis, this recency bias kicks in, and we start to assume that all recessions are like the great financial crisis in relation to housing. And what we know, because we did this on another episode, is if you go back and look at all the recessions, real estate went down maybe 1% or 2%, and the vast majority of them, it stayed up. But the great financial crisis is the outlier, so we start to assume we have to have a major boom and bust cycle. But really, housing doesn't follow the normal demand cycle that other products follow.
Because it's your home.
Because it's your home.
And it's your biggest investment.
More importantly,
it's like a nest egg.
It's more important than that. It's a fundamental human need. So it's different. You will make different sacrifices. I don't have to have a cell phone. I have to have a roof over my head. I will make a different sacrifice for those things. That's the difference in the demand and the supply.
There is one other thing that's kind of like a weird thing to say unusual, but it's actually one of the biggest reasons why housing prices dropped that not a lot of people talk about. Letting your house go in 2008, 9, and 10 kind of became socially acceptable.
100%.
People almost were like, it was like a middle finger to the banks.
Yeah, to the man.
You put me in this situation, I'm going to put you into a situation.
Yep.
That's not happening now because, like you said, banks got smarter.
Yep.
The government got smarter.
Yep.
And even just professionals became better too. Like we know, like it's just a more solid, sustainable market. And we're seeing it right now. So in a way, we kind of went back to a certain norm.
Yeah.
Like it's not moving as fast.
There's another way to think about that, right? Another challenge would be to say, are there market interventions that are happening in real estate? Are there policy interventions that are happening in real estate that are supporting prices or that are pulling prices down artificially? So you just mentioned one. The banks are artificially preventing foreclosures because they're doing workouts at a much higher level and allowing people to stay longer and get forbearance or do all these other creative things.
Even now. And is that a lot of the stuff that happened during COVID where they weren't paying and they were supposed to pay up? We were talking about this, like, hey, it's inevitable that there's going to be some foreclosures, and it wasn't because of that.
Bingo.
And a lot of people don't know that.
But that's a market intervention.
By the way, that other channel is definitely not saying that.
So this is what I'm talking about as we're looking about that. What market intervention? What policy intervention? So the policy intervention here in the Seattle Metro is, I've been doing land development and new construction for 20 years here, brother. And I can tell you, in 20 years, it has gotten 4 times as hard. It costs 3 times as much money. And there's less people doing it. Less people on the builder side, less people on the developer side, and less people on the subcontractor side. So do we have a hope for a bunch of supply being created? Absolutely not. And then every time our state legislature tries to pass something or get something moving, it doesn't create as many units as they want. So moving on to item number 4. Now you have to go build new insights from the fundamentals. So construct your reasoning based on these new fundamental truths. What are core drivers of boom and bust cycles? What caused this unemployment to happen? Where is the mismatch here? How is technology affecting this? How is being a lender or a non-lender affecting this? What's really happening? In other words, is it correlation or is it causation? See, this is a massively hard thing for people to get. People assume correlation and causation are always the same thing. A good example, dolphins that swim at the front of the pack have scars on them because they're the ones who take the debris. That doesn't mean that all dolphins with scars or wounds on them are the strongest that swim at the front of the pack. The problem is with data, with housing data, with numbers, with metrics. People make the assumption, well, oh, the dolphin's got the scars on it, the marks. It's the one that swims at the front of the pack. We need to go deeper and dig into it and dig into the why, the how, and could my thinking be incorrect? And if my thinking is incorrect, please challenge me. Drop it into the comments how we're missing something here. Number 5 is you got to look at these broader themes. Okay. You got to look at predictions. You got to look at insights. Like a really big one is that the mortgage industry is changing. Automation is happening, and they just need less people to do the actual job. A bigger insight, rates freaking matter to the mortgage industry, and they decimated it and basically put it into a recession, from an employment perspective, even though prices for houses didn't drop. So the idea that because a bunch of lenders got in when things were good, now a bunch of lenders got out when things got tough, home prices have to drop, is incorrect. But it makes for a good headline.
My biggest takeaway for what you just said I think this kind of references a whole be careful what you see on YouTube and social media, and think about first principles is correlation versus causation.
Yes.
Because I am definitely to be blamed on the correlation. I thought because of all the things happening in the 2008 crash, guess what? Those things are happening now. And because of that, there's going to be a crash. I wasn't looking at causation. I wasn't really looking at the circumstances. And over the course of the last 2 years, as we're literally doing this every single week, the one thing that keeps poking its ugly head up is supply.
Supply. Yeah.
So would you agree that's a great example of causation?
Yes.
Like the supply,
Yes.
even with all the other things
Yes.
happening, including the mortgage lenders leaving the industry, the supply is the biggest piece of data, along with some of the other things that didn't happen back in 2008, that's causing markets to not crash.
Yes.
By the way, though, there are some markets that are crashing, I say like just like a drop in prices because it's a different data happening there.
Correct.
Right? Like in Florida.
Some of them have oversupply. Some of them have natural disasters. Some of them insurance is becoming too expensive. But we're talking about it like in aggregate. So think about that. That's a market influence and a change in market dynamics because we didn't build as many homes. We built like 80% less homes for 4 years, 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And the piper is coming home and we got to pay the piper. The U.S. is in a housing crisis. Period. End of discussion. The Seattle Metro is in a housing crisis. And so I want to give you the example of how to put this first principles thing in context. So, number one, what is the problem? Okay, so unemployment in the mortgage sector collapsed during the housing bust. Okay. 2, why did this happen? Well, demand fell sharply because interest rates shot up and possibly because of automation and other things. 3, what must be true for this to change? Either the housing market needs to stabilize or the sector needs to get more workforce back. 4, how can we act on these truths? Well, if we cared about fixing the layoff problem, we would create innovations inside of that industry. But then we also need to start digging a little bit deeper and go, is there data supporting this hypothesis? Is this correlation or causation? What's the fundamental thing? Can I find other areas in the U.S. where layoffs have occurred and then home prices have come down? What happens as rates move up and down? What happens as supply moves up and down? And once the Fed starts cutting rates, which they've already started, how long do their rate cut cycles take? By the time this gets published, the Fed probably gave us our December rate cut again. The Fed, once they start cutting, usually happens over a year and a half. And so we know the rate cutting is coming, which is going to lead to stabilization of pricing, which is going to lead to more loan officers coming back into the business. Therefore, our price is going to crash. No, they would have already started crashing when they massively raised rates if they were going to crash.
In markets like Seattle, where the circumstances, the data is true versus like a Florida, maybe.
A Florida or even some parts of Texas. There are parts of Texas that are overbuilt. So there are only markets in the South that are overbuilt because they have the actual ability to get a bunch of homes built. So by attacking an article or an idea from a first principle method of thinking, you not only understand why the trends described occur, but also you position yourself to think creatively about long-term solutions or investment opportunities in real estate. In the show notes, we're going to include examples of real estate market cycles, real estate sales, home prices, and investing for you to read through on how to dissect some of this from first principles thinking, because our subscribers, our goal is to educate you and to help you make the best decisions and the most amount of money in real estate.